The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 5th ICLE webinar on Cities and Regions Talanoa Dialogues. This webinar also has information towards COP24 via Talanoa Dialogues as well as the GCAS, taking place today, Wednesday, 5th of September 2018 at 10 and 16 o'clock Central European Summer Time. My name is Jisun Hwang. I am Senior Climate Advocacy and Policy Officer at ICLE World Secretariat. I will be a panelist as well as a facilitator of today's webinar. On behalf of ICLE, I would like to extend my heartfelt welcome to all of you. Before we get started, let me quickly give you a technical introduction on 3 points. First of all, when you join the webinar, you are automatically muted, and I would like to kindly ask you to remain muted till the end of all the presentations to ensure smooth proceedings. Secondly, there is a box in the webinar setting where you can type in questions during any time of the webinar, so please do use this feature whenever you have questions. Last but not least, this webinar is being recorded, and in keeping with the principles of openness and transparency, upon closure of this webinar, the recording will then be shared with all the participants who are registered, as well as it will be uploaded on the YouTube channel. Now, with that, I have the pleasure of announcing my fellow panelists. I would like to first go to Mr. Yunus Arikan. He is the head of global policy and advocacy at ICLE World Secretariat, and he is also the local governments and municipal authorities constituency focal point to the UNFCCC. Now, I also have the pleasure of introducing another panelist that we have today, a very special guest, Ms. Emmanuelle Pinault, who is the head of city diplomacy at C40 Cities Climate Leadership Group. Now, with that, let us get started. Yunus, over to you.
Thank you, Jisun, for your presentation and facilitating today's webinar. As mentioned in your introductory remark, this is the 5th webinar, and the last one we had was in May. Obviously, in between, a lot of things have evolved, and of course, in the next couple of weeks and towards the end of the year, there's also a growing agenda in terms of activities and the things to be covered. Therefore, we assume this would be a bit loaded webinar. We do our best to close it in time so that we can have question and answer from the participants as well. But we would like to already underline that the flow of the presentations, as you have seen in these 3 headings, may occupy around 45 minutes or so throughout the whole session today. So today we will be going through 3 topics. 1, an update on cities and regions Talanoa dialogues. We would have an update on the Global Climate Action Summit, as mentioned by Jisun. It will be from Emmanuelle from C40. And then we'll go through also the updates on the UNFCCC process, the climate negotiations, particularly Marrakech Partnership, Bangkok, and COP24. And this will be shared together with me and Jisun as appropriate. If we recall the Talanoa process, that process was a result of the decision of the COP23 in December 2017 in Bonn, where based on all our efforts, it was possible that Talanoa dialogues would be expanded to a broad agenda that will be giving the chance for every city and region in the world to contribute, and it will not be just one-off event, but it will be a process. Of course, this implies only for 2018. And when we heard this opportunity, our vision was that the opening of the Talanoa dialogue towards all these stakeholders and everywhere in the world is an opportunity for us to make that NDCs could be fit for Paris Agreement, and this means that it's also an opportunity for us to fix and lift the NDCs. The logic or the rationale behind that was that Paris Agreement was signed or adopted in 2015, December, the basis of the Paris Agreement, which is the intended nationally determined contributions, was primarily presented before Paris Agreement was agreed. Obviously, during the negotiations of the last night, there were several things that came up, and of course, this means that all these NDCs who were prepared before adoption of Paris Agreement should be reflected to the realities of the Paris Agreement. For example, several elements were new in Paris Agreement, which was not valid in the UNFCCC or Kyoto Protocol before. One of the most relevant one for us is that Paris Agreement refers engagement of all levels of government. So which means that NDCs should be including inputs from local and regional governments, which was not the case before. Or in between a couple of years, the real economy of the world has improved a lot, and many of the activities that are taking place in the countries are not fully reflecting the NDCs. Therefore, they should be, if they take into account these kind of inputs, the NDCs could be much more ambitious. So the logic for us is that Talanoa dialogue is an opportunity for us to bridge the sustainable urban development with the climate action, and it should be an opportunity to engage all levels of government. So we immediately rolled out since the beginning of the year of 2018 that Talanoas should be having a cities and regions focus, or to be led by cities and regions. We are very happy to say that as of today, we have announced around 51 sessions and so far. There are several of those sessions still being refined in terms of date and venue. So 40 of them are almost confirmed and 10 are still subject to final confirmation. These sessions are taking place in 38 countries worldwide. This is also an impressive information. That means that from north and south, especially in the global south, a number of activities are taking place that is giving us the confidence that we can have further collaboration with them. And interestingly, there are several countries who are having unique engagement. For example, in Japan, we are having more than one Talanoa dialogues with different events, or in countries like Finland, Ecuador, or India, for example, we are organizing these in collaboration with the local and regional governments, but also with the national governments. And different outcomes are coming up. In some of them, they are signing MOUs, like the case in Quito, or in some of them, they are engaging different stakeholders, like the one in Canada, having First Nations being part of the dialogues as well. So each session is unique and diverse in itself. Therefore, we're excited to capture all these results. Let's recall 30 of those sessions have already taken place, and we're expecting that in August to October, even to November 22 to come as well. We encourage all our partners to share their reports that captures who have attended, what type of discussions have done, so that we can feed into the report by 29th of October, as well as we can come up with probably a joint statement that captures the political message. This doesn't have to be submitted by the 29th of October, but it would be good if we can come up with this by the time COP starts, because we will go into the details, but by this Katowice COP, we are not expecting to have a cities and regions summit as we have been experiencing or convening in the past. Therefore, it's even more important that the results of this Talanoa dialogue are carefully captured. In this next couple of slides, you would see, I'm not going to all of it, but country by country, which events are taking place in which month and through which partner. So this list is being updated and carefully carried out, rolled out, and as we said, the final version of this text, this list will be presented to the UNFCCC and the Fijian government to summarize all what has happened so far. This is a very basic screenshot of the template, report template, and we encourage all our partners to fill this. Most of you have received it, and in case not so far, feel free to reach out to Jisun or us so that we can share with you this template so that you can fill it up and share with us as appropriate. With this, I will end my contribution to this part of the session webinar, and I think now we will hand over to Emmanuelle, where the screenshots will be continuing to be shown from my screen, but the description of the presentation will be done by Emmanuelle. Jisun, is that correct now?
Yes, Yunus. Thank you so much. Emmanuelle, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Jisun and Yunus, and thank you, ICLEI, for inviting C40 to join this webinar. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon to give updates and details on the upcoming Global Climate Action Summit that will happen next week in San Francisco, California, and whose subtitle, as you can see here, is Taking Ambition to the Next Level. Next slide, please. So many of you already know about the GCAS, as we call it, Global Climate Action Summit. It has been quite widely socialized already among the urban community. And here you have the 6 leaders of this summit, which is the first and unique gathering of non-state actors to step up climate action ahead of COP24 in particular. So you all know already probably that the main host is Governor Jerry Brown, the governor of California, who worked in this project very closely with Mike Bloomberg in his capacity of UN Special Envoy for Global Climate Action, and Anand Mahindra representing the business community. And they've been joined since the beginning with a very strong support from the UNFCCC. Patricia Espinosa, that you see here, has been co-chairing the effort since the very beginning. And lately, this is probably a news for you, this group of 4 very engaged and influential co-chairs have been joined by 2 new co-chairs. You can see here Mr. Xuwei Zhenhua, who was before the lead negotiator for China in UNFCCC, and has accepted to co-chair also the summit, showing the importance that China is giving to global climate action in general, and the role of non-state actor in particular, which is very interesting. And lately also a new co-chair has joined, the UN Special Envoy for Youth, that you can see here, giving a very strong message of mobilization for young people during this summit and civil society in general. Next slide, please. So the summit has been structured around 5 challenge areas, which are the 5 key topics that are being discussed during the summit. Here you see the description of each of them. Challenge area 1, healthy energy systems, and all the discussion about the transition to renewable energy that is mainly being led by the climate group under the regions and states coalition that they are leading on, the Under2 coalition. Then the inclusive economic growth is mainly the business track of this summit that has been delivered and designed and delivered by BSR, Business for Social Responsibility, in representation of Women Business Coalition. Sustainable Community Challenge Area 3 is ours. It's the challenge on cities, the urban track of GCAS, and C40 has had the privilege to coordinate the city's participation in GCAS on behalf of the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, and with partners, including ICLEI. On Challenge Area 4, coordinated by WWF on land and ocean stewardship. And finally, the climate investors agenda and the transformative investment needed to deliver the Paris Agreement, led by CIRES, representing several investor groups. So you see here a broad coalition of actors that have quite decisively decided to join forces to collectively bring the voice of the non-state actors into the global discussion and contribute to step up our collective ambition ahead of COP24 and send a strong message to national government. Next slide. Now narrowing specifically to the city challenge, the work we've done between C40, GCOM, ICLE and others has been to create what we call the GCAS City Challenge, which has been launched in July officially under the One Planet Charter, which is an initiative by GCOM, C40 and ICLE also launched last year. So the idea was to accelerate climate action in the cities, taking the opportunity of the summit and propose a new series of commitments and new targets, very ambitious targets that cities and mayors could subscribe to before the summit. And so the city challenge is structured, is a very complete and comprehensive architecture of commitments that you see reflected here, which correspond to different sectors that we will discuss just after. But as you can see, some of those commitments, such as the Fossil Fuel Free Street Declaration, 100% renewable energy, Edmonton Declaration, Powering Pascal or Green Bond Pledge, you probably know them already because there are pre-existing commitments that have been reboosted for GCAS. And in yellow, you see some new declarations and commitments that have been created specifically for the event. And in general, we can say that GCAS has been a fantastic opportunity to accelerate action in local climate policy, in city climate policy, and we can see more in detail in the next slide how it has been working in the different sector. So what GCAS has delivered really is a fabulous increase into the city commitments to action to deliver on the Paris Agreement. First, in the topic of 1.5 degrees, which is the most ambitious goal of the Paris Agreement, we've seen, thanks to this event, a high number of cities committing to plan for emission neutrality by 2050. This is really the overarching goal that has been achieved thanks to this event, and this is the way we know we will achieve the most ambitious goal of the Paris Agreement. Then in a net zero in the building sector, what we've seen is an incredible number of cities, 19 in particular, as of August 23rd, but you will see next week that more cities are going to be announced, that have taken the commitment to ensure that every new home, every office or workplace in their cities is zero carbon by 2030. This is an extremely bold and ambitious commitment that has been taken right now by those 19 cities ahead of GCAS, and you will see more next week. In the topic of urban mobility, where mayors have been invited to commit to make a major city area, a major area in the city to become zero emission by 2030. First, and second, to procure only zero emission buses by 2025. We also have a very good momentum with currently 14 cities who subscribe this, and more to come in a few days, or to be announced in a few days. Zero waste, one of the other sector where cities have been incredibly increasing their ambition. The new Towards Zero Waste Declaration, which engages cities to work to divert at least 70% of waste from disposal or incineration by 2030 has been signed at the moment by 23 cities. So again, a very impressive progress. In terms of renewable energy, 100% renewable energy, which ICLE has been leading on in particular, using the pre-existing campaign and joining the global movement around 100% renewable energy. There are also some amazing announcements to come on the numbers of cities who have established targets to procure 100% of their energy from renewable sources by 2030 up to 2050. And finally, one of the big topics that mayors are committing on with the opportunity of GCAS is equity and inclusive climate action. We have a large number of cities who are starting to pledge to work really all this in all these sectors through equitable and community-led projects. So making sure that all the most vulnerable population, which are the most affected to climate change, are part of the solution as well. So this, what I've just presented, is the political outcome for the cities at GCAS, and this will be included into the GCAS general political outcome, which will be a call to action, a kind of declaration presented by the co-chairs of the Global Climate Action Summit to the UN, so first at the UNGA in September, and then at the COP24 in Katowice. And this call to action will, on one side, formulate a number of general asks to national government, increase their ambition, ensure to engage into long-term transition and long-term decarbonization planning, and work collaboratively with non-state actors, cities, regions, businesses, and investors to deliver this. And on the second side, this call to action will detail very specifically for each of the challenge area, each of the constituencies that have contributed to the summit, a very detailed list of outcomes and a very detailed list of policy asks that the actors, the non-actors, formulate to the national government. And in particular, in our topic, or in our case, we will, as cities, formulate asks on related to climate action planning, buildings, urban mobility and transport, waste, and equitable climate action. So you see that this event really has a very strong political outcome or outcomes. And this is really great to see and a bit unique, honestly, to see such a good connection between the global discussion and the global conference and action on the ground. And I think we hope this creates a model that can be followed by more events in the future. Next slide. I think in general, there is a very ambitious program at GCAS. We don't have the time here nor the space to detail it, but I can tell you a few key features. More than 60 mayors confirmed, 2 days event, high-level sessions, plenaries, etc., with a very high number of high-level speakers, governors, heads of states, celebrities. More than 3,000 attendees and 500 affiliate events. And I will stop here and give the floor to Yunus to hear what ICLE is preparing for GCAS.
Thank you, Emmanuelle. Yunus, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Emmanuelle, and I hope you can recover from your voice soon, because we need you for the summit, not just for this webinar. As Emmanuelle mentioned, dear colleagues, California or Global Climate Action Summit is a unique event. on its own, let's say, vision and conditions and structure, and it is slightly different than how we have been engaged in the UNFCCC process through LGMA. So let's be realistic also on these differentiations, and I think it's an experience for all of us in terms of lessons learned, and we will see how much it will feed into the future, or how much this will create further processes. But obviously it is an important milestone, especially when we go to more details when we come to the COP. The way COP is designed in Katowice is also a bit difficult, or it's a bit unique this year. So I think these two events are slightly complementing each other. We also know many of the organizations, as mentioned by Emmanuelle, there's around 500 side events going on. Different sessions are evolving and organized by different partners. In particular, from our side as ICLE, we have a couple of events that are co-supported or co-led by ICLE. There is the best way to track them is the summit website, but if a brief overview, on the 11th we have low emission solutions conference, a specific one-day event on 100% renewables, a number of events on divestment, and an event in Alameda Country, a member of ICLE in the San Francisco region. 12th of September is a unique event on climate heritage mobilization. There will be the award ceremony of WWF Untitled Chapter. Cities for Climate event is an important day in the afternoon, and there will be a special Talanoa dialogue of the Fijian government. On the 13th, there will be in addition to the official summit, the board meeting of the Global Covenant of Mayors. The European Commission International Urban Collaboration is organizing a special event. German government is organizing a side event, and ICLE member Assisi is focusing on Laudato Si. On the 14th, in the morning, North America is having its third annual meeting on the 100% renewable energy. The Beijing Environmental Bureau is having an event where it is supporting. There will be a finance Talanoa, and Australian Capital Territory is also hosting an event in the afternoon. But throughout 14th, the official summit is also evolving. In addition to this, ICLE will make additional announcements on its vision for climate neutrality based on the announcement that came from 2000 in Montreal World Congress. That's also connecting to procurement. We will be releasing through ICLE US a case study on New York City's experience on divestment, and an analytic report on the drivers of change. We will step up on the Transformative Actions Program that was initially launched in Paris, and there will be a couple of initiatives that will be around the effort to connect ocean, cities, and climate. In particular, that U.S. Conference of Mayors will host its summer meeting in 2019 June in Honolulu, which is a member of ICLE, and there will be a pre-event or around this event, several initiatives that connects both U.S. actors, but as well as global partners on climate, ocean, and islands as well. With this, it's time for Jisun to take us through the latest progress on Marrakech Partnership for Global Climate Action.
Thank you, Yunus. So I would take over on the Marrakech Partnership for Global Climate Action, the MPGCA section, with the latest updates from here on now. First announcement is, as many of you probably have received from the usual LGMA newsletter, that there are two co-focal points now nominated to serve together. One is myself, the other one is Sarah Kupka from Energy Forestry. So the four of us will then be working hand in hand in the lead up to COP24 regarding the human settlements group's engagement under the MPGCA umbrella. Now, the first update that I have is on the annual yearbook process. The first yearbook was last year. This year, the second yearbook process has been started with a slightly different mechanism from last year. So it's not a survey-based system anymore, unlike last year. So it's going to be a lot, for a large part, it'll be drawing upon the existing materials that I have listed here. So already we have lots of a wealth of materials regarding the outcome documents from COP23, as well as the yearbook, where many of the initiatives remain fresh and relevant. as well as there are some other inputs that have been already submitted through the Talanoa platform, as well as there's the action trackers document, and there's also the outcomes and announcements to be announced at GCAS, as well as New York Climate Week. And there's been regional climate weeks in Uruguay and Singapore this year, and also the TEMS that we had at the May-June sessions in Bonn. All of those will then feed into the yearbook process, as well as the NASCA data providers' input will then also be taken into consideration. Having said that, next slide, please. Having said that, should you have any other input that you would like to flag, then this has to be sent to the secretariat with the email list that you can see over there. And the deadline is quite coming up short, which is the 21st of September. So if you have any input that hasn't been actually covered from any of the sources that have been mentioned in the previous slide, then you ought to submit this to the secretariat by this deadline to this email address. Now let's move over to the MPGCA engagements at COP24, which is contained in the next slide. Now, the plans that have been approved by the high-level champions have been communicated to stakeholders a couple of days ago. So we have a basic idea of constellations as to how the MPGCA will then unfold at the COP. So it will take place from the Thursday, the first week, all the way to Tuesday/Wednesday of the second week, starting from a press briefing. And then, as you know, there are 7 content groups, 7 thematic action groups within the MPGCA, human settlements being one of the 7. So each group will have 3 hours slot to present their outcomes. And then there are many other events, including roundtables on interlinkages, cross-cutting issues, as well as SDGs 8, 9, and 11. Now, all of these will then be rounded up with the high-level event on global climate action, which is a mandated event by the COP. And there's also to be decided, but there's an additional element of the amphitheater to serve as an action hub, and more on this will then will be communicated in due course by the Secretariat as soon as they have more input on this. So to have this all in a graphic format, this is how the constellation would look like at in Katowice. So as you can see, we start with a press briefing, and then all of the action events and roundtables will be recapitulated with the high-level event, which will be somewhere between Tuesday and Wednesday of the second week. Now, there has been a guidelines document released by the Secretariat, which basically outlines what is to be expected under the MPGCA umbrella at COP24, and also templates for a concept note and also the outcome document have also been released, which are available on the platform of the MPGCA, whose address will be contained in my next slide. So there is a tight deadline to be followed when it comes to working together amongst stakeholders to finalize those concept notes of events at COP24. The preliminary first draft has to be done by the 21st of September. And then there's an in-person meeting foreseen. The exact dates are to be decided, but somewhere in early October, there will be an in-person meeting in Bonn, Germany, which will then be used as an opportunity to further work on and fine-tuning the concept notes. And after this, by the week of 15th October, it'll be the concept notes will then be fed into the side events and exhibits or online registration system to be finally fully uploaded on the UNFCCC website on the 22nd of October. Now, in order to facilitate all these information flow and further guidelines to be given to stakeholders, there is a process that the Secretariat has communicated. So the guidance document that I mentioned, which can be found on that open platform, can be accessed, as well as the webinar took place today at 2 p.m., which lasted for approximately 2 hours, where high-level champion Tomasz Khrushchev was present, as well as from the Fijian side, Christine Hwang, representing Minister Enia Seriatu, was there to provide further input and outlines as to what is to be envisaged and what would be the expected deliverables from stakeholders under the MPGCA umbrella. Now, as I mentioned, the dates are still to be decided, but there will be an in-person MPGCA meeting in Bonn in Germany in October. At the moment, tentatively, it's set on the 10th and 11th. With this, I round up my intervention on the MPGCA, and I give the floor to Yunus, who would then give us updates on the Bangkok session and other elements under the UNFCCC. Yunus, over to you.
Thank you, Jisun. Of course, action agenda, both bottom up through the stakeholders, their networks, like the one that was seen in California, or under the authority of the UNFCCC and the presidencies, which is through Marrakech Partnership, is an important agenda. But of course, the climate negotiations are equal, or even not, if not more important, in terms of clarification on the future work on Paris Agreement. And of course, deadline was Katowice this year, that there will be a rule book, which is called now Paris Work Program, Paris Agreement Work Program, which will clarify all the mechanisms, rules, and all the procedures to be followed in terms of guiding the nations how to deliver Paris Agreement, including their commitments, tracking their progress, and also engaging with thematic and sectoral processes. But of course, there's a lot of work to be done, and therefore there was a decision to have a 1 week of climate negotiators getting together. This has started already yesterday in Bangkok, and it will continue until Sunday. Because of the workload, they have decided not to have any side events during this event, and even the interventions are limited so that immediately negotiators can split into working mode. You can follow from the UNFCCC and IASD or some others. There will be an opportunity for uploading interventions, and under these conditions, we believe it may be good to consider a very brief statement that highlights a couple of our priorities. One are the elements that we should believe could be highlighted here could remind the negotiators that multi-level governance is not anymore a wishful thinking, but it should be part of their thinking of the implementation, like that's their mandate, and the multi-level governance in the sense that both in the implementation or design of their indices, but also in the global processes. Let's recall in Paris Agreement, adaptation and capacity building has specific references to subnational action. On the discussion about the non-market approaches, this is a very hot topic because in the future, when Paris Agreement is fully evolved, parties will have, each of them, regardless of their development, will have their own contributions. Therefore, this traditional flexibility mechanisms like emission trading or CDMs are a bit, will be outdated. There will be more type of sustainability mechanisms. And one of the proposals that we have been pushing since for many years is that sustainable urban development, plans for urban development, plans for developing investments in their cities, which can prevent carbonization or which can lead to decarbonization, could also be considered as a non-market mechanism because it is mainly a legal or a public process, and it means planning. So that could be also an contribution, but also an income generation for many developing countries, especially. And finally, we would like to remind the negotiators that global stocktake of the NDC proper implementation and the Talanoa dialogue that was initiated, a unique model in this year, should be hand in hand, should strengthen each other, and especially that the spirit of Talanoa should not be faded out, and it should evolve into a certain level of good collaboration among parties and their stakeholders, in particular local and regional governments. In the next couple of slides, we'd like to go through our agenda on the next couple of months or weeks. As Jisun mentioned, in July and August, there were regional meetings. This was particularly very active this year, and local and regional government networks were particularly active there. In Bangkok, we don't have any representative from ICLE, at least. If there are any colleagues, if there are any partners, please let us know. In September, just after GCAS, there will be an environment ministers meeting in Canada, and there is certain discussion on cities as well, because for the first time the G7 communique, heads of state communique released in June had a reference to all levels of government, in particular on the climate agenda. We'll see how Canadian colleagues could help us to move forward. Climate Week New York City will have several elements, including an update on One Planet Summit. Talanoa dialogues are rolling around. Meanwhile, in October, IPCC plenary will be held in Korea. This will have two special points for cities and regions, because there will be the first official discussion on the results of the cities IPCC, and hopefully there will be an adoption of a research agenda until 7th assessment report, which is around 2023. This will give a boost all our efforts in terms of both recognition and concrete recognition of the scientific data on the cities and regions. There will also be a release, or hopefully first an adoption of the 1.5 special report, which is now in consultation by the parties. There is an effort among some of the lead authors of this 1.5 report, 1.5 degrees report, what it means for cities, what it means for local and regional governments. So a special document is being prepared, and there's an effort to have a consultation with some selected cities and regions, so that more specific conclusions and lessons learned can be driven. This will take place in October and November. In October, there will be a pre-COP in Poland. We don't know the modalities yet, the agendas, and how and who will be engaged there. This year, at the end of October, there is the first Urban 20 Summit in Buenos Aires under the G20 leadership of Argentina. There is an initiative developed by City of Buenos Aires, Paris, and UCLG and C40, supported by a number of partners. This will be also a unique experience. And in November, there will be 2 weeks biodiversity COP in Egypt. This is particularly important because the local and regional governments have a special action plan for 10 years in this phase in the biodiversity. It's one of the most ambitious action plan that is adopted for local and regional governments in any intergovernmental process. This process will be concluded in 2020, and we hope it can continue with a strengthened mandate. And we wish this experience can also be fed into the climate process. Vice versa, from the climate we can feed into the biodiversity. There is a number of processes going, like Cities with Nature, and connecting nature-based solutions to climate adaptation and resilience. So there is value to connect these processes more actively. And ICLE and Energy First, they are leading in this process, and there will be a number of summits of local and regional governments. At COP, you are hearing probably that the logistically and politically there are certain challenges which are unique for this year's COP. Taking all this into account, we are advising that that it's not necessary for a huge mobilization of political leaders, especially to Katowice. With the city of Katowice, we believe it's not convenient to consider a regions and cities summit, as we have seen over the past, let's say, years so far. Therefore, we are thinking of more like a non-political and non-negotiation session, more like a reception, more like a celebration of our Talanoa dialogues, with the hosting of City of Katowice in the first week, in the second week on Monday. There will be certain side events UNFCCC is collecting. Several countries like European Commission, Germany, countries like China or Japan, they always have a tradition to host sessions on cities and regions. We want to have a synchronization of these events so that there could be a regular flow and effective feedback from each event. And of course, this will also be coordinated with Marrakech Partnership events. But for the politically important ones, which means political leaders, we hope at the beginning of the second week, Monday and Tuesday would be the best time where we can influence the ministers, where we can have some high-level dialogues so that multi-level climate action and multi-level climate dialogues can be demonstrated throughout the year in the Talanoa dialogues, but as well as at COP. That's our goal. And the last slide is that Katowice is, of course, an important milestone, but 2019 is also even more important because this year there will be 2019 UN Climate Summit. There will also be a high-level political forum to review SDGs. So this is the last year before 2020 submission of the second NDCs. Therefore, outcomes of this California summit, the Talanoa dialogues should continue so that national reports or national commitments should be strengthened and more inclusive and more ambitious. And this needs to be further built up. We cannot imagine everything to be finished in this next couple of days or weeks. Therefore, viable mechanisms in 2019 is even more important. This year, UN Habitat Governing Council will convene. You may recall there is an effort to bring new urban agenda, SDGs, and climate agenda. So this could be influencing. UN Environment Assembly will focus on sustainable consumption and production. In May, Heidelberg, city of Heidelberg will host International Cities and Climate Action Summit, supported by the Baden-Württemberg, state of Baden-Württemberg and the German government, and it will have a special coverage on multi-level action. In June, UN Climate Conference, regular conference will come to Bonn back again. This year will be unique because it will also overlap with the 10th session of the Resident Cities Congress hosted by ICLEI. And depending on the city's IPCC decision, we are expecting to have a science policy practice dialogue in collaboration with Nairobi Work Program. Throughout the year, we hope to have a coalition or an initiative around the multi-level action dialogue around Talanoa. We would like to explore this possibility with NDC partnership as well. Our global networks like C40 and UCLG will have their global summits, which is every 2 year or 3 year. This will be an opportunity for us to raise our profile or strengthen our initiatives. C40 is about to announce their dates and venue. UCLG already announced it to be held in Durban and 18th to 22nd of November. And of course, the year will conclude with the COP in November this year or next year. The unique thing is that we are not clear who will host this COP. According to the regular cycle, it's expected to be in Latin America, and one of the candidates was Brazil. We still don't know whether this is now this will be approved by the region or globally by the UNFCCC. The uniqueness is that it's not just logistical host, but also political. For example, the climate champion, high-level champion, is also dependent or as appointed by the presidency or incoming presidency. Therefore, clarity on who will host the COP is becoming more and more important. We're expecting to have some more updates soon, by the latest, of course, in Katowice, and we'll follow up on sharing these updates to you. With this, I would like to conclude this my section, but also this round. As Jisun mentioned, you can raise your hands, you can write your questions if you want to share your inputs or clarities. And Jisun, I think the floor is yours so that you can moderate this interactive session now.
Thank you, Yunus, for your updates on the Bangkok session, as well as our steps around COP24 and beyond. Now, so far we have only one question in the question box, which is about how the PPTs will be shared. Would it be shared? The answer is yes. Upon closure of this webinar, not just the recording of this video, but also the PPT files in a PDF format will be shared. And I see a hand from Angela, so I give you the floor, Angela. You have the floor.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the very informative webinar. That looks like a lot of work ahead for everyone. So I am Angela Enriquez, representing SlowCat, and have some notes that Mark wanted to share. He sends his apologies for not being able to attend today, but just wanted to point out that there will be a transport day this year, and it's going to be on December 6th, and it's going to be a full day event. And the topic will focus on urban mobility tackles climate change, decarbonizing transport in cities. And so, of course, we would like to have city representation there. So if there's any contacts anyone would like to share for anyone that would be interested, please feel free to reach out to us. And then secondly, SLOCAT and ITF, we are the Marrakech Partnership focal points for the transport sector, and very keen to continue collaboration with anyone having events on transport. So happy to support the planning of any transport sessions or bringing in any speakers if any of your events require speakers on urban mobility or transport. So thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Yes, it's great to have you in the call in this webinar, because ICLE is also one of the two focal points for the human settlements. And then, as you know, between human settlements and transport, we do have a lot of synergies to pursue. So it's great to hear that you'd be encouraging more input and contributions from the human settlements group, and we are happy to do so, of course. And then we look forward to engaging with you further on this later on. Yunus, would you like to also further add to that?
No, I think it's good to hear the focus this year would be on urban mobility. There are a number of initiatives coming up throughout the year. Of course, once again, the biggest challenge of Katowice is even hotels are not fully available, and we don't know where these kind of events will be, whether it will have UNFCCC passes or not. I'm so happy to hear from Jisun that there was this presentation today from the presidency. I hope we can have more updates on engagement. From ICLE's side, as we said, we were relatively conservative in terms of mobilization of our delegation, but still, I think we have to still be flexible in possible things to come up and keep each other involved. And it's good to have SLOCAT joining us. And then in the California, there is also, I think, a transport decarbonization side event that will take place.
Right. Just to build upon that, Yunus, regarding the engagement at COP24. I mean, we did have some clarities shared with us at the webinar that the Secretariat convened at 2 p.m. One of which was that, at least unlike last year, this year basically the MPGCA, the action venue, and the negotiators would be in close proximity. So at least, because there was one comment about how to bridge that gap, because last year was in two zones where negotiators had some hard time coming over to participate in the action side. But then, at least from the Secretariat side, that there was that answer from the MPGCA team that at least this year they would be closely clustered together as much as possible. So at least that bridge between the action momentum and the negotiators would be ensured. So we look forward to actually building upon that actually, and then yeah, so we should look forward to utilizing that close proximity. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open. If you have any questions or comments to share with us, please don't hesitate to raise your hand or type into the question box. At the moment, I don't see any other hands raised. Emmanuelle, is there anything that you would like to compliment on your presentations on the GCA, GCAS updates?
Maybe she was off.
No, I'm still here.
Okay, good.
Well, I would be happy to answer questions on GCAS. I imagine there are many. And what I can say is, as we have already emphasized, it's a unique event. I think it's the first time that we get to that level of coordination between different constituencies on the level of action in particular. And we're very excited about it. In terms of the event as such, I cannot show you now the detailed program, but I invite you to have a look on the GCAS website, which is globalclimateactionsummit.org. And here you can find the detailed program of all the sessions. I think it is going to be completed very soon with the names of the speakers. I know we've had already many questions around who's speaking where. As you know, it has been a painful process for everyone involved in the staging to get to the final program, as it is always in that kind of events. But finally, there is a final proposal, and I think it's going to be published very soon by California State, who are the ones really producing the event. In terms of city participation, we have over 60 mayors confirmed to attend GCAS, but only about 20 of them are in the official program. And the rationale for this has been that this is an event, a multi-stakeholder event. So the slots have had to be distributed among the different constituencies, and the city group got a part of it. And the other thing is the criteria for having a speaking slot in this event in particular was bringing something new and ambitious on the table. And it has been scrupulously respected by the programmers. And certainly has helped also to motivate some of the commitments I have mentioned before in the different sectors. So at the end, we have about 20 mayors from diverse regions of the world, all the world represented, and diverse type of cities, big cities, small cities represented in this program. I can't enter into detail now, but I'm happy to answer questions if you have on this. Thank you. Perhaps as we still have a few minutes, just mentioning that apart from the official program, which is actually on the 13th and 14th of September in the Moscone Center in San Francisco, there is a side event, an affiliate event that C40 and GCOM have been working on, which is happening on the 12th of September afternoon in the San Francisco City Hall. If you're in San Francisco and you haven't received an invitation yet for this event, please contact me, and we will be happy to include you in the list. It's this event is an invite-only event, such as GCAS. So if you want to enter to any of this, I encourage you to get in touch, and we'll make sure that the GMA constituency is present there. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Well, I still don't see any other questions or hands raised. I guess we are starting to wrap up here. Yunus, any other closing comments from your side?
No, we'll keep up the flow of information and I think obviously everybody will be expecting here updates from California, as well as some news from Bangkok, I hope. Thank you very much, Jisun, and thanks a lot, Emmanuelle.
Great. Now with that, thank you, Emma, once again for joining us. Now we are wrapping up this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you so much for joining us today at this webinar. And my special thanks goes to my two fellow panelists, Yunus, Arikan, and Emmanuelle Pinault, for your wealth of information and informative updates for all of us. It's been immensely beneficial, and then I hope all the participants here are taking a lot from you today. So with that, I close this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. This webinar is now closed.